Good morning.
Good morning. Okay. I would like to call to order a special meeting of the Avalon City Council. If we would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if we could please have the roll call.
Councilmember Albers?
Here.
Councilmember Olson?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cassidy?
Here.
Mayor Marshall?
Here.
I'd like to announce that Councilmember Hernandez will not be in attendance.
Okay. Are there any announcements or written communications?
I have none for this meeting.
Okay. Members, there's nobody in the audience, so I'll just skip that part if that's okay. There's
Mayor,
nothing on the...
Mayor, could I just remind the public or anybody that happens to be watching this meeting at 9 o'clock that the DMV appointments are all filled, but they said that they will be taking walk-ins on Monday and Tuesday. And also, I encourage anyone who wants to come down. City Hall has all the forms that are needed, including the Real ID and information about the Real ID, which is a big change that's coming up that people probably want to be aware of.
Well, then I'll announce an announcement as well. No, thank you. October 16th, the hospital will be out in front of City Hall. We'll be doing a TB test and flu shots. The flu shots will be $20, and the TB test will be free. And also, we hope to have a representative from the school with the VIP applications for those people wanting to volunteer in the school. That's the requirement, that they had the VIP form and a TB test. Okay. General business.
Okay. The purpose of today's study session is just to review our council policy guidelines that we established in 2014, and I do not believe they've been updated since then, so we could just, there's 8 sections. I don't know if each one needs to really be concentrated on, and hopefully you've had time in your busy schedules to review, and if you have any recommendations or additions that we'd like to put in there. I know that there is a time noted in there for the council meeting starting at 6, so that's an easy one that we reflect that to say 5 o'clock. So with that, we could start with section 1, which is the purpose of the council policies.
I have no changes.
Nothing.
I didn't either.
Okay, section 2 is the basis of authority.
Toilet.
I'm sorry. No comment. See, now they can hear me fine, huh, Dudley?
The only question I have on this next page is the attendance at the meetings. For some reason, I was under the impression that on 2.2.2, a vacancy shall occur if a member ceases 3 consecutive meetings, but it's actually 3 months.
Yeah.
So that would be 6 meetings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, except that you might have a month where you only have 1 meeting because the council agrees amongst themselves.
Yeah.
So
That's usually only
Which is a good
once.
point because January 1st this year is on a Tuesday. So that's something we'll want to address at some point.
But
Few generally has 1 meeting.
but then sometimes we say we've got a lot of stuff, so we'll put it on a couple days later as well. So,
Yeah, that's true, Annie.
yeah, we've done that before, I think.
So that's
Okay.
by California law, so.
Okay. So that's fine. I just had a question about that. I always had it in my head it was 3 meetings, but
on the 2.3.1, I had a question here as to whether appoint was really the appropriate word or nominate. Because it seems to me, aren't we doing similar to what the, like for Supreme Court justices, the president nominates a candidate and then the Senate consents?
Confirms.
Yeah, because
Confirm.
you could bring in other names, right? So that's why.
because we ratify the decision.
But if you don't like my
Right, that's why I'm
name
saying
coming
it's like you're-
forward,
I think it's more of a nomination
Nomination.
process, that you're putting names forward, and if we agree to them,
But the second part of that sentence,
That's what it
Pam, it
says.
says that which appointments are subject to city
Right.
council's approval, and then she's the one that makes the
but an
appointment.
appointment presumes that, I mean, what Cindy's saying, that they've already been appointed and that the mayor has appointed them, and then we are ratifying or confirming something that's
Right.
already been done, as opposed to somebody being nominated.
I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay.
So do we want to change that to nominate?
I would.
I just closed it, Dudley.
I would make that motion.
I will see how,
If that's,
part of that is from our municipal code.
Oh, that's
too.
true.
Okay.
So
And
let me see.
I don't remember what the language is in the
I'm
code.
thinking it reflects that, but I'll check on that to see if it can be
okay. But if it can be,
nominated.
if
Okay.
it can be changed, we're good with that.
But yours, the way I think our code reads, Annie, is that you have the final say.
Oh, okay.
That's what, okay, so that's what I understood.
That you still take their recommendations, but you have the final say, but I'll double check on our code.
Okay. Okay.
So if 4 of us said no to somebody, then Annie could still appoint that person as a planning commissioner?
I'm pretty sure that's what my understanding is.
I will double check, get back.
No, we unappoint them.
Okay.
Okay, so are we on
Page-
2.4 yet?
Sure.
Sorry.
Why not?
One of my, I guess discomfort is best word to say. We receive a lot of emails from the public that just come to the council. And I don't know if that's just an educational process we should embark upon with the community to include the city, because it really doesn't become part of the public record unless they send it to the city. Is that correct?
No.
I think
Any
we-
record
No.
that's sent to any of us is a
Yeah.
public record.
All of our
Actually-
private emails, all of our emails are subject to public information.
Okay, and I understand that.
But I think as a practice, it would make sense to maybe to have a policy that says if a council member receives information in that way, it should be, and notices that it doesn't include the city manager, that the city
Yeah.
manager should be,
I
a copy
try-
should be
yeah.
forwarded or something.
I think
don't
we all
know.
try at some
Yeah.
level to forward things, but then sometimes, like if I'm traveling, I won't, and then I
And
forget
when
to
they
do it
come
when
in
I get
at the last
home.
minute, like on the day of the council meeting, I think that those get
We had
forgotten,
a
but
couple,
We could
yeah.
add it. It's just
Right. Well, and I wonder if one of the things we might do on the website, because it has a list of, we're individually listed with our emails. If there were something that said public comment or a different email that also went to you.
That's a great idea.
That also went, that went to you, Denise, and then, obviously if it was addressed to the city council, then you would send it to us.
So if you had a button on the website that said to make a public comment, click here, and then it automatically populated to our emails with a
And to
CC to the
Denise,
city clerk
right.
and the deputy city clerk. Congratulations, by the way. And to that would be good, because then it would automatically just go to everybody it needs to go to. I don't think that's too difficult to do. Okay. Good idea.
Okay, 22.4.4. I can't believe I'm the one that's bringing this up, but Mayor Pro Tem Cindy McGugan Cassidy.
I can be Cindy today if you like.
In the conduct of a meeting, when, I don't know, you watch this stuff over town and they'll address the chair, kind of. And you can speak more eloquently on this, but when we get into good conversations and whatever, and then there's a lot going on, and I really have a hard time going like this, and because I guess I'm just in my head or something. But anyway, if there would be a better way to maybe address, I hate to make it sound like that, to address me, to say, Annie, I want to, you know what I mean? To keep the flow going good, but not to be, so it's not disruptive, I guess.
It even though I'm breaking it right now, it does. If you go to regular meetings in the big city, it flows through the chair, you know, and you don't engage the public individually. You know, you get the permission of the Royal Highness to talk to the family people, the little people out there.
I think, you know, and maybe this is an example. So I've tried in the last 6 months to be more less reactive during conversations, and I try to make a conscious effort now to say, you know, Mayor Annie, and I caught myself doing it last night when Commissioner Phillips was sort of behind me, and he kept trying to want to say something but couldn't get anybody's attention. So I do think that that's really helpful because like last night we had 11 people kind of all talking, and while all the points are valid, it's really hard to keep flow in the conversation too.
Right. So I think just an awareness. I don't have to think it has to be. I mean, because it says it here. I guess we're just not really doing it all the time, right?
I will make an effort to do better with that.
Mayor, may I be recognized?
Smart ass. Is this being televised? Yes. Oh, shoot. I hope nobody's awake at 9 o'clock.
Can we go back to 2.41 and 2.42, which kind of deal with information, and this is kind of opaque, and I don't really understand what it means. And I guess I had some questions because I've had numerous requests from people to meet with me, and I am frankly somewhat hesitant because I think in some ways it violates the Brown Act, that I encourage people to share things with the city manager. I assure them they'll be distributed to all the city council people, that if they have, you know, comments about something that's pending on the agenda, please come to the meeting and share it with everyone, because we are supposed to be making decisions based on shared information, common information. So I'm wondering to what extent does this mean that, you know, if you, let's say you go to a meeting with you know, a business owner, and they give you documents, does this make it the individual city council person's responsibility to make sure that those documents are shared?
I think if it has to pertain to an agenda item that's coming up, I would think that, yes, you'd share, and I think you guys have, and then we
and presumably any document where you're meeting with somebody because they're a city council person relates to city business. So I'm not even sure, should it be limited to things that are on the agenda?
Because it could be future agendas.
Right.
I take number 2. Sorry.
No.
We're trying. I'm trying. I might have a different take on 2.4.1. So when we originally were putting this together, part of it was during budget discussions, even when I was newly elected, and there's obviously, if you don't have a history in preparing budgets or sort of the business dealings, there could be hundreds of questions that you may ask, and so I understood this to be work with staff, ask your basic questions, and anything that may spark controversy or others in the community may want to speak on, maybe ask those questions at the meeting, but to really understand the topic, to do the homework before you come to the meeting so that you understand the topic. And my personal example would be the sedimentation study. It's not my bailiwick, it's outside of my real comfort level, and so having to ask a bunch of questions prior to the meeting of city staff. So
Okay, that makes sense.
That's what I understood it to be. But.
Okay, and then, it says information may be requested from staff, which is kind of, that's the struggle I'm having, is that I recognize you do have a lot of questions, and I do want to look at a lot of documents, and it's the timing of things. And I think what would be helpful is I had a better understanding, for instance, of how finance keeps their records. Are they in a file that says who the vendor's name is by year? Because then I would be able to say, put in my box, and I'm going to view it here in City Hall, the file for so-and-so. I mean, I'm speaking in terms of my audit responsibilities for the warrants, for example. So I'm not sure that it's a change in the policy. I think I'm just more trying to understand, so information may be requested, but is there a corresponding obligation on staff to respond within a certain amount of time, to let us know when the documents will be available? If, obviously if it's something that's going to take some time to pull together. I mean, not with the precision of a Public Records Act request or something, but it.
Right.
Pam, exactly what section are you in right now?
So I guess 2.41.
And I think you're more asking what's the internal process by which we'll
Right,
get
and
information.
I think there is another section later that I marked that was probably more specific to the question I'm asking about is, how do we ensure that.
That you get the information you requested?
You get the information that you request, yeah.
And I think, and I had spoken to Denise before, and this, I don't think needs to be in the manual, but we all get calls, we'll all get an email from the same person, okay? And sometimes you might respond immediately, might take me a couple of days, or it's not in my bailiwick, so I just kind of know it's going to be, I just like know Cindy's going to be doing this, or you're going to be responding, or whatever. But if something has been decided, it would be nice, because then you send that information to Denise, and if that issue, let's say it's dog crap, has been resolved, then if we know, so that we're up on the latest, so that we're not reinventing the wheel and talking to people when we really don't have to.
Yeah, no, that's
So that kind of process would be good, just for the sake of time, more than anything. Well, and knowing what the heck's going on. Okay?
Mayor?
Yes.
Generally speaking, I would say actually in 99.999% of the times, if I ever ask a question of staff, I always CC the city manager so that there is some follow-up. And then occasionally a city manager will reply saying, we've received your question and it's really better suited for, and then she'll CC that person. And then now we have a third person on the trail or a fourth person on the trail. And so that's how I have operated, and that's how I monitor if I've asked a question, and then when I get a response, then I file the email away, sort of thing. So,
right, which is really 2.4.6, right? In
yeah.
some ways.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And I think maybe will be channeled. It's kind of a strange phrase, but I think that what you're saying is, or that the city manager will be included, or are we saying that you have to reach out to the city manager first and then she's going to designate who? So for instance,
No.
Yeah, okay, because I think that would be awkward, and I'm just checking with the city manager whether she's comfortable. So for instance, in my LA County Commission, we had a question about homelessness plans. I send an email directly to Audra, but I CC Denise regarding that. And then you stay on the chain so you see what's happening. I think that complies with this, right?
And I think the key word in this section was the substantive. That if it was going to require, many man-hours for a city staff member, that's when it would be channeled through the city manager. And I appreciate when all of you have CC'd me just so that I know that they're doing something. But I think that's what this section was really geared towards, because at that time, a lot of staff time was being pulled away, and the city manager didn't know what was happening, and so that's...
Because, we're not supposed to be directing staff, so, Okay. I just have a question. It's not required, and I don't think it's really under. When we vote on something and we say no, is it necessary to say why people vote no?
I believe it's helpful.
Yeah.
I believe you're taking an opportunity to say, I'm not in favor of this because, and you're sharing why you're not supportive, or even why you are supportive of a topic.
Right.
And there are actually instances, I'm sorry.
No, please. Here we are.
Should we put a nickel in the jar for every time we all do
There are
this?
instances, particularly like if we had appeals on planning commission matters, where legally our decision is attackable if we do not articulate facts supporting the basis. So there are instances in which, we rely on the city attorney
Okay.
do that for us, where you have to make findings of fact.
Right.
Like, for instance, if there's an emergency or there's a public health and safety issue that supports why you're doing something, those kinds of things.
Well-
But I agree with Cindy. I think it's important for people, the public, to know.
And for their constituents to know why they're voting the way they are, or whatever. Okay.
And I think the value in our small community too is that there's so much street business, if you will, that there's a lot of assumptions that are made. There's a lot of, well, she's not for this, she is for this, and I know for me in particular, I've often heard that I'm for or against things when I was like, well, no, I voted against that or I voted for that. That doesn't make any sense. So I personally use that opportunity to, when I feel it's something that's talked about in the community, I'll articulate that better so that I can then say, no, go watch the video.
Right.
Here was my.
Okay, that was just an aside.
Do we want that in there?
I don't think we say,
No, I
no, I don't think we
I
have,
just
but
want
I
to make
think,
sure I caught that, what you were.
yeah, I just think that understanding that it's, people need to know what we're thinking.
I'm going to change April to March.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
On 2.5, our meeting
And
in.
6.
And then 2.7?
And
Oh, yes, go ahead.
I was just going to throw out, because I don't, at one time the city did not have an elected mayor. Many cities do
Right.
not. I don't know if the topic has been discussed or raised or considered. And I think there is a certain amount of disruption in having one person every 2 years have to run again. I don't really have a strong opinion about
But-
it, but it's just something that,
Well, but
I
direct election
wondered
was a
about.
ballot measure. The direct election of mayor was voted on by the people.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it'd
You
have to
another
come back.
election to undo
Oh,
that.
okay.
Okay. Or you could make the mayor a 4-year term, which, no, I'm not speaking for me, I'm just saying.
But that's
Because it's difficult, you just get into
just
it
get
and then
in.
you're doing it again.
Yeah,
and
long-term strategies and plans are really hard to implement in a
Right,
2-year cycle.
right.
Would you like that as an item of discussion? Say January, we might be
Yeah.
slower?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that would be good.
Okay.
How
And
long ago was that?
Oh, boy, that was 84 maybe?
84,
or
yeah.
Something
Oh,
like
okay.
that.
Crowfoot Smith.
that'd be a
Somebody's
good
dad
conversation.
was responsible for that.
And before, was it just, everybody was
Rotated.
at large and they selected a mayor among themselves every year?
And then, well, because those people we talked to, like at the league, and then they rotate every
Right.
year. Well, but that's disruptive too.
Yeah.
They just that's even worse. That's only 1 year to you just get your face out there and then they're pulled back,
Well,
so.
it depends upon what the job of the mayor is, whether the job
Exactly.
is just to chair the meetings.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Change April, March.
2.7, membership and associations. I go to those COG meetings, or the SCAG meetings, and they pay me $125 to go to those meetings.
Lucky you.
Does anybody else get paid for any of the meetings they go to?
I get paid $125 a month only if I'm actually at the meeting for the Gateway Council. But my appointment to the Gateway COG is, I was appointed by the council
Right.
to be the participant. So for the Gateway cities, and I don't know if that's different for any of the other associations, because this is the only one that I do, but I do know that this one was, and it has to be an appointment by your council to be the
Right.
representative for your city.
Yes.
The league buys your lunch.
Okay. Well, and I don't know if we personally should be keeping that money. I don't know if it should go back in the city coffers. Because why am I getting paid to go to a meeting when you go to meetings and you don't get paid for them? And would it be money better well spent to put back in our travel budget for other stuff?
I want to say that this was just brought up, I can't remember what meeting I was at, and if a council person was being paid to go to a meeting, they were to turn in that money. Let me find out the legalities of
Okay.
that, if it is indeed.
Because they'll even reimburse me for my hotel and all of that, but then what do we pay that agent, we pay them a lot of money.
Right.
So So if the taxpayers are paying for us to be in that association, I think the taxpayers should get the money back.
Did you get a W-2?
Yeah,
We did?
I do.
Okay. So, anyway, so if you'd get back with us on that one. Okay.
I'm getting rooked. I just get lunch.
I didn't get
You
anything.
don't even get lunch?
I get great Armenian food when I go, but that guy just retired, so I don't know what they're going to bring now. Oh my God, it's delicious, once a month. Okay.
Okay, so meetings, we need to change the time. I don't have anything.
Oh, yeah, 5 p.m.
I don't have anything until 3.8, council meeting agendas.
Okay, so back to 3.41. Non-emergency. Non-emergency shall be called by the city manager or by a majority of the council. Well, how can a majority of the council call a meeting because that's in violation of the Brown Act?
It's not a violation of the Brown Act.
In accordance with the Brown Act.
You're calling a meeting, you're not taking any action.
Well,
Meeting-
we're making a decision to have a meeting.
Then in a public meeting, you'll take some action that the meeting's for.
Okay.
Just having the meeting is not,
Oh, just
Right,
calling it.
just deciding to have the meeting under the Brown Act is not a
Okay,
violation.
okay.
unless you decide when you can have the meeting, before you have the meeting, what you're gonna do, then you're violating.
Then, of course. Okay. And where are we?
3.8.
3 point,
Okay.
So, you know, I appreciate so you're trying to balance, there can only be so many things on the agenda. I mean, at a certain point, it's just ridiculous that we're not going to be able to get through it. But I wonder whether there might be some, because it says any council member may place an item on the regular meeting agenda. Okay, first of all, I didn't know it was supposed to be a written request. I mean, I'm assuming that an email counts as a
Yeah.
written request, but I have, I think, just popped my head in and said, hey, can we do this? So I don't know if it has to specify that it has to be a written request.
I don't mind us for keeping the written request in there just for record's sake.
Okay,
I don't know.
okay.
That's not formal, Pam. It's how you've sent me an email, good enough.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Okay,
I do always usually turn right in my seat and just put it on my potential list.
right. And then I don't know if I've asked this question or not before, but do you keep a running, list of things that are going to have to be on an agenda?
At least 3 months
And where
out.
is that available?
Oh, it's just on my desk.
It's just on your desk?
Because
Okay.
I'm juggling things all the time, and if, particularly, department heads will say, yes, I need to get this on, and then as we get closer, no, I need to punt it to the next one.
Right.
It's like a fluid.
Yeah, no, I
list,
understand that it
yeah.
would have to be fluid. Okay, well, then I know. I was gonna ask. And that was all I had about that. And then I just wanted to make sure that the language in here makes it clear that we're posting to the website both the agenda and the packet for all meetings, right?
Yeah, I certainly hope it's getting done for all the meetings.
Yeah, I just think it would be good to have it in the policy that is our practice, that it's not just.
Absolutely, because
yeah.
I know that on, say, like the planning commission one, I just checked the other day, she states the same thing at the end as I do, that it's on the website and at City Hall.
Right.
So, it's on the counter, just so council knows in case you do not.
Right.
We post the agenda face itself on the countertop, and then there's a folder, so if anybody came up and I want agenda item 6, that who's ever at the front counter can run that particular item, as well as then the agenda face itself is posted out here in our little display box, and then the entire thing is now on
Okay.
the agenda, our website.
And so,
Okay, and then I'm curious, I meant to look this up and I'm sorry I didn't have time, because with the advent of, the internet, so it used to be that many cities had long lists of people who demanded that they want an entire copy of the packet. And of course now it seems to me that you should be able to say to somebody, do you have computer access? Because we'll send you the link to it. So I don't know whether the Brown Act's been updated to reflect that or not. Do we have anybody who's on a standing list that wants a?
We used to before, in fact, that's changed in the last maybe 9 months, where we had a list of maybe 30 people we were sending the agenda to, and now because it's everything is on the website that they've just kind of like self-trained, that they're going right to there.
Right.
And it's like we send the link to you guys.
And then the only other thing is that I'm going to ask, can we start doing double-sided?
It certainly should be, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I just, that,
We try very hard to do that.
I
yeah.
appreciate that, and I know making copies of thousands of things is frustrating, but I think just for purposes of being sustainable and environmental.
I think that's when they
Where-
forget to push the two-sided button.
The two-sided button, yeah.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, my eyesight doesn't allow me.
Yeah, you can make
to
the font
just-
bigger.
Yeah. Then you can't read the entire line by the time it's big enough for me. But,
I just figured out how to rotate the pages. And it's good.
okay.
On 3.9.4, we don't really keep an audio tape of it.
Wait, where are you, Oli?
3.9.4, page 5 of 8.
Because it's a digital recording,
Yeah.
digital record.
Oh, man. Why, how times have changed.
Yeah.
No, and that's only 4 years.
A little over 4 years.
Yeah.
4 years and a month.
Yeah.
And good old days when Shirley used to transcribe the whole freaking meeting.
Yeah.
Who did?
Shirley Davy.
Oh, my.
Verbatim minutes.
And she did it rather quickly.
Because she did Greg's shorthand.
Oh,
So
boy.
did Gail.
My mother learned that, yeah. She was his secretary.
Are we going on to page 6 now, kind of, Council?
I gotta change 10.2.1. Since it doesn't reflect the order of the agenda anymore.
Where are you, Oli?
10.2.1. Bottom of page 6.
Call to order, pledge, roll.
'Cause now we're doing the
Oh, department heads?
department heads and the public.
Okay, thank you.
So you messed me up on the Planning Commission one because the Pledge of Allegiance was at the top in the middle of the page.
Yeah. That's a good point. It would be, it might just be my OCD, but having a standard format for all agendas that all look the same, that all follow a sort of a,
I can still screw it up, but yeah, that would be good. Sometimes I just overlook it all the way, but Oli's the one that tells me to, whoops, you forgot that this.
Oh, well.
So thank
Pam
you,
might
Oli.
be able to answer this better than I. So like the Planning Commission agenda, I mean, we could do the top part so it's, uniform with our city council, but they have a very specific format because they have the CEQA stuff, they have the,
But I think the general order in which things are taken is probably the same. I mean, they do the Pledge of Allegiance, the call to order, Pledge of Allegiance.
so it's just the stop, the
Yeah.
first part.
Yeah.
And there's no, there's an invocation on ours. Is there an invocation on the Planning Commission? Probably
no.
not.
And
Is that legal?
do-
I mean, does invocation doesn't necessarily
It
mean
doesn't have to
religious.
be. Frankly, I would prefer not to have it.
Yeah, I think
I
it's
mean,
nice.
I think it's appropriate to recognize when, members of the community
Right.
are ill or have passed away or something like that. But I think, I remember Bob Mesher used to do a prayer, and for all the years that I've been here, I just think it's always awkward.
And I used to try to get him to come, I did it for a while and then it kind of just lost it. Or every once in a while I just come up with something inspirational but not religious.
Right.
Well, and I think in 4 years ago when we first began, we had some very tumultuous times, and you would take a moment to sort of lay the groundwork of we need to be peaceful, we are going to disagree, we need to respect each other, and I always felt those to be very calming. And I'll give the second example that in Rotary, we do an invocation every meeting, and it's non-denominational. It's
Peace and love.
peace and love, and pray for water.
Right.
There's a
Sisterly,
lot of
brotherly,
thinking about each other. It's a time to reflect on those we've lost, or so the way in which you have done the invocations as mayor, I've really appreciated. If they do become a particular denomination of religion, I would feel uncomfortable with that because we are
But if
we're
I
a
s-
multi-denominational community, if any
Okay.
at all.
But, so invocation is still a good word. That doesn't
I guess.
refer
Yeah, I
to
don't really know
you're
what
invoking
invocation-
something, right? But
Okay.
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 And then sometimes I just if it's okay if I just say we'll skip it today if we don't have anybody
Right.
to think about.
Your discretion, ma'am.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
very good.
Grand Poobah.
Grand Oh, man, that's
We
what I'm
gotta get
getting
her a
you.
map. We
I'm
gotta get
getting
her
her
a
a hat for Christmas.
A fez.
No, thank you. Okay, where are we now?
Okay. So on page 8, 3.10.4.2,
Because everybody else was good
5
with it.
minutes to each speaker.
Oh, we're going to 3.
Let's talk about that.
5's pretty long, but 3 sometimes is kind of short. I don't know. My experience has been that people struggle with 3 and maybe 4 would be better.
Well, and what sometimes I'm not disagreeing with you, sometimes what they would do is, we did it a couple times, 30 seconds before the thing, there was just a little ting to tell them they were getting close. We did it once or twice, it seems
Well, we
like.
did
Paula
it during
did
the
it.
candidates forum.
Yes.
The
Oh, that's
CPAC
where I
did
saw that,
And it
yeah.
was really, it was effective.
Yeah, so maybe that, just
So
for
we're getting the
start.
clock.
That was what I was gonna bring up.
It's on the budget. I remember that I was like,
Yeah.
when I was cranky.
Well, and
Oh, we don't have money for that. But
I've looked at-
I do think it's asking.
Scott
Yeah.
kept threatening yesterday he was purchasing one for us.
What was,
As long as he buys, that's fine.
it's definitely, I've already done a tremendous amount of research on this because in prior years, it has been a real struggle. And the concern that I had with some cases of public comment are, in some cases, one, you will have a person who just wants to hear themselves talk, and a majority is not relevant to any of what we're discussing, or it's just taking however much time they want to take to just go off on tangents. The other one was that I find a little frustrating is having somebody say the same thing over and over and over again and not being able to say, okay, you've now said that 5 times and we hear you. So the timer I had looked at because I see how well it works in my...
I agree that we absolutely need to.
But they're
limit-
anywhere from $250 to $5,000. I mean, there are some that are very basic and very easy to use, and they're $250. The one that we have at the Gateway COG is less than $1,000, but
I forget how much was the budget item.
I can't remember either.
I
It
even
was-
saw that in the
it was-
budget, and I felt like it was really high for what it needed to be.
Right.
And again, like I said, I had gotten all the information for the one that we use at the Gateway COG, and it was less than $1,000. It was $800 and some, and it's just so beneficial, and especially
Well, my
when we
concern was that
have.
This says 5 minutes, and that's not what we've been doing.
Right.
And I also feel like 5 minutes is way too long.
Yeah.
I'll go for 4.
And, maybe people are, but I do feel that some, the people who speak regularly generally spend time, writing it out and trying to stay within the 3 minutes.
Do you want to
So
try
Ole just
4?
said he thought 4, maybe we should try
I'd be
4.
okay with 4.
And maybe what this should say is, or as otherwise directed by the council, so that if we did have, some major deal, like with the Vons.
That was,
It
I
was
think
clear.
we limited to 3, I think, didn't we? At
Yeah.
that time,
Right,
because we knew
went
we had a
from
lot
2
of
to 3,
people
but-
talking.
But in that instance, so if somebody came and said, I'm speaking for all the neighbors in, the flats, I think it would be appropriate, and they requested, or maybe you could say, unless otherwise requested additional time and granted.
Well, or what do they say when I give my minutes to you?
Yeah. I don't know
Yeah,
if we want-
no.
Now, Jordan walked in the room, so
But we
I
have had
think,
people kind of come up and say that, right?
Oh.
I'm speaking for other people, so I need a little more time.
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
thing. It'd be good if we had a formal way of saying, well, sorry, no, or yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and then that falls back on me to say, unless you have something new to add,
Right.
that
Well,
kind
we
of
play
thing,
with
and
some
that, so
wording.
that's kind of
Sure.
bonuses on me, I think.
And I feel it is extremely disruptive and fairly inappropriate to have the city attorney with his phone doing the timing, because I don't know if you guys hear it, but I hear it, and then it's very awkward. Then now my focus is taken away from the speaker. All reasons why I would really like to have a timer that's just on the wall that the person speaking can see the timer, and it takes all of us out of the mix. That it's basically would be deputy city clerk clicking the button when somebody came up to the podium to speak, and then just you press the next button to reset it, and it times on its own. There's no, well, wait a minute, how come this person, that person, but.
Have you been involved in the conversations about the time clock? What do you think? What kind of device do you think we've been considering?
We did explain why the one that we had in our budget was so expensive, because it was going to be wired into that. Correct?
Yeah, just for functionality, because you've got a timer here that is clear for the speaker, you've got a timer that's clear for you guys, it connects over to the person who's using it. So there's a little bit of complications to it, but it's not too complicated. We obviously were conservative to make sure that it could do all the things that we needed to do. Also, we needed to tie it into a future voting system or into the Granicus streaming system. We wanted to kind of leave our options open. We're not trying to get a Mercedes-Benz of timing clocks. We just need a Honda that can get us from point A to point B. So we are looking at options, and we have our IT consultant actually kind of came up with a quick fix that he could probably implement pretty easy with just a couple monitor screens with his programming. So you might even try that as like a $100 thing and kind of test it out and see how well and what other features or factors we need to consider. So
Okay.
I think we can get something rolled out pretty easy for a relatively cheap amount, give us a good basis to see if there's any other things that in its practicality and implementation do we need to really have it do or make it do, because there's a little flexibility there.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I think we'll definitely have something implemented. The nice thing with his system, or even anyone that we buy, you do have a little more customization with his system. The one you buy, obviously, you can dictate the amount of time and some things like that. But especially when you get into rolling over time or adding time or other features like that, those things make just a start stop a little bit more complicated.
Right.
And that's what, when you're looking at these, purchasing a system, the ones that have some of those more capabilities cost a little bit more money.
Right.
So that's kind of what we're evaluating.
Great. Thank you.
Hey,
That sounds
do we
good.
have a copy of Edison's grant?
What was that?
Do we have a copy of Edison's grant application for the?
Prop one.
For fresh water,
Yeah.
for Prop 1? I'd have to go back and look and see if we got the full application.
Could you do that
Would you like a
for
copy?
us?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can
please.
see what we can do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
4.1.
And you're measuring trash can lids for jumping fox? Yeah, okay.
At least 36 inches above the ground. Otherwise, you have a lot of dead little foxes. I don't know how they suffocate in the day. They eat trash on top of it.
Because they panic. Yeah.
What number are we on?
4.1.
Okay. Thank you.
Before we move on to that, there's just some comments in here about disruption of meetings and whatnot. And I will just say in the past, we have had quite a bit of disruption in some meetings. I'm really excited about where we are as a team right now and how well we're all work together and work with our audience and whatnot. But I think there does come a time, Annie, where you may need a little assistance in bringing the meeting back around. So I just want to be clear that it's okay for the rest of the council to help you when need be.
You got my back? You've got my
Yeah.
back. Okay. But I guess sometimes I'm a little more tolerant because we come up with emotional, especially from the audience, we come up with emotional issues sometimes.
Sure.
And Bill Hill, God bless him, I'm sorry. I can't tell him no.
Right.
especially when I try to, and he says, I can't hear a thing you're saying. God bless you, Bill. But it's those kinds of things. I guess that's just my respect for elders that I just have to kind of let him go. And so in those cases, I apologize in advance.
And I think with our new timer system, that
That will help.
that will help.
That will
us
help.
also
Right.
keep heard.
But there are times where we have received members of the audience to speak to us who are making very clear and inaccurate accusations, and that's where
Yes.
I feel the need to step in and sort of say, this is untrue information, this accusation that you're making is inappropriate, it's not factual.
Right.
And let's
Yes.
get you the facts that you need so you feel comfortable with,
Right.
the concern that you have.
Right.
Anyway, okay, I'm ready.
Well, and I do want to comment on the and maybe it's in here. I like what we're doing now when people come up. If we do have the answer, we're answering them. You watch those county board of supervisor meetings, and these people come up there and they put their heart out there, and then it's not even a thank you. They just sit down, and there's no communication at all. And so I think we're good to be able to respond when we can respond. Okay. What number are we on, Oli?
4.1.
Okay.
Mayor, I just need to say this
Okay.
one comment about your statement you just made. I know that people will come up, they do have misinformation, and they could be putting down the city or a staff member or you as the council, and it is hard for us not to respond. I just caution us not to engage in making all of a sudden like an agenda item that you guys are then providing direction to staff that we, just to be cautious of that. We have
Okay.
to be careful.
Good point. Very good point, because I think maybe I've done that.
I was actually thinking public comment part more of agenda items, not necessarily the 3 minutes to discuss an item not on our agenda. But
Yeah.
I think there's a mix of both of those subjects that we've been
I was
talking
thinking more
about.
of the oral communication.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes it's easy to just let a person talk and then move on to the next subject.
Yeah.
On 4.3.1, do we need to list out, because SCAG's not listed on here, for example.
Right.
And there are other things, so now not all of a sudden, but now strategically, we are a member of the National League of Cities. And the conference in November is actually being held in LA, which is a huge boon for us to be able to attend that. It may not be back close by for 6 or 7 years. So do we really need to, they include but or are not limited to? Could we add that language?
D says meetings that come to the attention of the city manager or the city or council member. I think the idea is that because there are budget implications, that there should be some general agreement among the city council that, yes, we want our limited reimbursement funds to be used for somebody to attend this.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's better, maybe what this should say is, and any other meeting that the city council states should be attended by a member.
Well, and we're not doing that. If something comes up, I'm not coming before you and going, "Hey,
Right.
kids, can I go?" But I think your point is well made for budgetary considerations, because I don't know what we budget and what we actually spent in council travel, but I don't think that's something that's going to get less. I think it's going to get more, and but I think if we.
Because you're right, there are things that come up with the county that
Right.
require
We
attendance
need to
that
go.
you can't predict.
Right.
They're not regularly occurring
And then
meetings.
things like
You're
I-
going to the water group with Jordan.
I think
Right.
the local ones are one matter, because it's a boat ticket, and
Right.
rarely do you spend the night on the mainland.
Right.
It's the ones like the carnival ones that's coming up
Yep,
in
that I'm doing,
Puerto
yeah.
Rico, and then the other ones in Florida. There's
Sacramento.
yeah.
Sacramento.
San Francisco for the PUC.
Who's
Yeah.
going to Puerto Rico?
I am for the FCCA conference for the cruise ships. We're meeting with all the executives of, I believe, 7 different cruise lines. There is a contingent from Catalina going.
Which that brings up something else, and not just specifically to that, but when we go to Sacramento or we go to there, we need to know what the agenda is that I would be laying out, because that's could be, if we're not all on the same page, I mean, that's important. You know, like if you go to see Ben Allen or whatever, what's this stuff and
That's a really good point, because you had a meeting with the county with the sheriff's department, and there was a lot of points that I would have appreciated
right, same
participating in and having on that agenda.
Right.
So, I mean, I agree there should be some, if we're attending on behalf of the city and making representations on the city, we really should have
Yeah,
some
know what
sort
we're
of
doing.
consensus on where we are.
right, our philosophy or our goals or whatever. Jordan?
I think that was kind of the intention when we originally put this together, was to help ensure that when you're doing stuff, not only for the reimbursable side of things, to make sure that the money's being spent well, but when you're going to go to something, this is worth our time or not worth our time, or what are we talking about and do we kind of agree upon it? Because in the other section, you know, no one council member can commit the city to a policy or anything. So it's just trying to provide that
Right.
check and balance for it. But it is hard as things come up to always have that check in. So if there's a means in which we can add that section for check-ins afterwards. One of the other things that we kind of looked at but never really got into when we were putting this together was exploring the possibility of providing calendaring functions of official council member time. So other cities will have, here's my calendar as a council member, so you can see what they're doing, and it's a tool not only for council members, for the public, but for council members to see what everyone else is doing. Oh, this person's going to this meeting, this person's going to this meeting, and it helps everyone be aware of what has been attended. It also is a check-in to see who didn't go to meetings that they were supposed to go to for whatever reason, or who's actively attending what businesses. That may or may not fall within the policy manual, but I thought it was actually a really amazing tool to really help provide not just transparency, but sort of that bridging that gap of awareness of who's doing what and when did they go, of those things. And so part of that could be how we do a check-in. If something wasn't able to be officially noticed per the policy now, maybe we can add a part that allows for checking back in, because it's also reporting out. This is what we learned, this is what we found. So then it's like, okay, yeah, that was a good meeting, or no, don't ever go to those people again. That was a waste of our time. Nobody agrees with that. That kind of process. But that's where I kind of liked the calendaring function as a tool. And I could forward you a couple of cities that do that for council members. It would take a little bit more effort. That's one of the hard parts. But I do really like it for the transparency and for keeping track of who's doing what or not doing what.
And it helps if we're going to be setting calendar, you know, we have other things that we need to do, and they can say, well, look, everybody's gone on this day or some, but who puts this stuff in the calendar?
Yeah, that's it. Because I get to the point where, okay, my calendar is my blotter on my computer, but now, oh no, that's not true now. I have it on my phone. Oh, I also have it on my Outlook for the city. So part of it is, you know, getting everybody trained. Okay, we're just using this. I'm not sure. Yeah, and you're shaking.
I gotta
your
go.
head 'cause you
I
have
gotta
so
go.
many other responsibilities.
I got married and lovingly now have 5 stepchildren that each have a different color in my calendar for all their different events and things. I have 6 businesses plus city council. I just simply cannot spend any more time. I cannot even move to an electronic calendar because everything is so highlighted here, colored here, this.
Well,
I just, adding one more calendar for me would
calendar reporting
implode.
out, it's less about keeping your calendar and it's more about reporting out your calendar. Like, I went to this meeting, I went
Right,
to this.
and there is
I
a
went to these.
requirement
Yeah.
for that. I mean, then there's a good one here, which I
and we
think
do.
everyone does follow. You know, that you have to report out at the next city council meeting that you attended something at least, or what does it say? Make a report,
Make a report regarding the meeting.
right.
Clear and concise.
Yeah.
I mean, I
think
know it
we
would
do
be helpful
pretty
because
good.
like when we had that long email about all these different dates and meetings that were all set up and everything, and then I sort of would panic, like, oh, did I write it down right? Didn't, you know?
Right.
And so being able to pull up a city calendar and say, oh, okay, that is when this meeting is happening would be helpful.
Well, it's a little bit of
Oh, city
it's a little bit of
calendar, yeah.
both. It's partly like scheduling, but more of it's like reporting. It's part of the reporting out part of it to help keep track of, is this an authorized expense? And it helps you keep track of who's doing what, and even just things like, oh, you're going to that meeting, I didn't realize that. You know, it's that kind of transparency between council members, but also for the public to see who's engaged in what different agencies, because then public might be saying, I'd like you to engage with these people more. But it's really trying to get at that element of the approval to go to certain meetings and keeping track of who's done what, and providing kind of a more of a documented, this is what we've done versus a verbal, this is what we've done.
And I can see having a city calendar that says, you know, that's already plotted the first Wednesday of every month is the Gateway Cities Council of Government meeting - Cindy. And I could see the, you know, whenever the SCAG meetings are, that it's -Annie/Oli or what that, whatever that our council meetings are listed on there, that any special meetings or League of California Cities Conference, the FCCA conference, you know, adding our study sessions or whatnot. I can see that, but I hospital consortium meetings, the water meetings, all of those, I can see having those as, because they're all fairly standard date related meetings. But all of the meetings that I do that are related to city council, I've got so-and-so wants to talk to me about something on my calendar.
And I don't
you
think
know,
you're
and that's
talking
just,
about those.
No.
Those
I
one-on-ones
don't-
or those small group meetings. I don't think that
No.
would be that. It
No.
would just be the big stuff.
Again, this was just an idea that we talked about for a blip when we were putting this together.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I wanted to bring it up because you brought up about the accountability and tracking and who's doing what and that sort of element of it. It also had the part of helping provide the responsibility of council to represent the island and engage, and it showed a tool. It was a tool to help demonstrate that you are in fact doing that, because here's all the things that you are doing. So it
Right.
kind of is a kudos to you that people could see, oh my gosh, I didn't realize you were
They're
doing so
busy.
much, when they say, what the heck are you doing? But anyway, I just wanted to kind of put it out there as an idea if we're trying to make any modifications to this to accommodate
Right.
transparency or needs or accountability or check off. That was one of the things that we briefly talked about putting this together.
So what then? What do we want to do?
Well, I mean, I'm just more concerned in terms of whether that there is some sort of consensus among the city council for budgetary purposes as to, you know, what meetings are being attended, what's being reimbursed, and that we've realistically estimated what those expenses are going to be. Because I don't think anybody's going to meetings just to get out of town. No. You know, that's, but I'm not to
Yeah,
laugh though. I mean,
yeah.
there certainly have been
Yeah.
councils where that was
that
an
was the
issue.
case, yeah.
Okay.
So.
Well, and I certainly agree to that, which also falls into meeting and conference expenses, for example. I have not for 5 years requested reimbursement for meals or anything like that. And for Gateway Council or Gateway COG every month, I never, not for 3 years have I incurred any hotel expenses, that I handle all of my own travel in that regard. So the city's not actually paying, the city's only paying $50 a month in travel expense, which is the boat ticket and, 15 miles of travel. So, I think we're all pretty good on this particular council about not,
Yeah. I
having
have
the
to say,
city
I've
pay for
always
all
thought
the
that
expenses.
Meal reimbursement was not appropriate.
Yeah.
You're going to eat
Anyway.
So I'm not sure why it is that the taxpayer should pay for your meal simply because you're in
Yeah.
a different place that you're in.
But we're also looking at this as a perpetual document. So even though we may be fiscally responsible with our money, I also think that in here, for example, it says that that meals will be, or that all of your expenses will be reimbursed, but that's not necessarily a given. We don't all turn in
Right,
expenses.
for everything. let's go back to 4.5.1, because it says on the reports, to make a report regarding the seminar did it at the regular council meeting and shall make materials obtained at conferences available to all other council members. That's impossible. If League of California Cities, all that stuff that we
Yeah.
got, if we would have to make copies of all of that. So I just think it should all be funneled to the city
I
manager.
think that, not necessarily does that mean to make copies of it, but you could be placing your information in one spot like we do when some documents are so large for our agenda packets.
Okay.
And they're available for
Reading file.
Okay.
review.
But then also.
And once
so-
again, most of these materials, like the lead materials, are all online.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, they're available to everyone.
Right, right.
So maybe there needs to be some language that, provides that when they're available online, all you have to do is indicate.
Right. And I know the city receives an agenda packet for the Gateway COG meeting. I used to turn in my physical copy, but now it's all, the city receives an electronic version. So if anybody ever questioned what the meeting was that I attended, we could easily forward them a copy of the agenda.
Right. And when I come back from SCAG, I think I've been pretty good about giving, like, if it's planning stuff, I give it to Amanda. If it's Metro, I give it to Audra, because it's not something that we need, it's more stuff that they
And does
need.
an electronic copy of the SCAG meeting go to Denise? Because I would
I
like to
don't-
see those agendas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that you get it
I don't know
outright.
if I get that agenda, but
Right.
We
Okay.
can easily make that happen.
Yes.
and I could very well, and I don't say.
You know what? Because I think, because it's Christy or one of those girls will say, hey, Anna, remember you've got this meeting. So it might be coming to City Hall in some,
Okay.
other than
Somebody
to
else.
myself, yeah. But,
So would you like the SCAG agendas, the Gateway COG ones, and any that come our way electronically to be posted on the website?
If that's the easiest thing, yeah.
That'd be good.
what is amazing is all of us go to these meetings, they're all talking about the same stuff.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
I talk about
True.
homelessness,
Yep.
it's just
True.
every rich way, it's the same, it's the same. Okay, where are we going to now, folks?
The agendas are online for SCAG. On their
Look
website.
at me find us just like that.
Yeah, and most of them are going to be available
Yeah.
on that.
And maybe that's,
Website.
yeah, maybe, bless you. Okay.
Bless you.
Are we at 5.1?
Anywhere you want to be.
Oh, let me, because I don't know if it's coming, let me talk about meetings and things. When we have these ad hoc committees, and I don't know if we have anything on here about ad hoc committees, I believe that the city manager should be also in attendance to those. Because I think to keep us in line, perhaps, if we're maybe saying something we shouldn't be saying, or just, I mean, she's running the operation of the city, and I believe she should be in attendance.
Where I will disagree in that is the hospital consortium meetings, for example. We're not really committing city resources, so to speak. There's questions that involve the city, and yes, as the committee, we're sort of helping spearhead this next process, but when I do my agenda for the meeting as the chair, I CC the agenda to the city manager, and then generally speaking, within the same day or 24 hours, I whip out the minutes for the meeting and I CC the city manager on that. But for that 2-hour time frame, I feel that her resources would be better utilized in her office versus in that meeting. So I think I think in the water consortium meetings, I think it's critical, but I don't think all ad hoc meetings, like the cannabis applications, I'm not necessarily sure that city manager needs to sit in on all those.
Well,
I-
number one, she was appointed to be one of those people, and we're going to evaluate those applications. We evaluate those applications separately.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to do mine at home, and she'll do hers whenever. And there was a fourth person. I forget who the fourth person was on that evaluation team. Me, Richard, you, and someone.
We couldn't do the sheriff, and I think
Right.
that we've asked recreation, but I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
We were just having
So,
a discussion yesterday.
and by the way, we have those now to redo.
I do think on some it's critical, but on others I think it's more of a discretionary.
Okay.
know.
I mean,
I think she has the ability to insert herself anywhere she deems necessary.
that, I agree with that.
And I think that's the extent of what I think we have to take. I mean, she's got the discretion. If she thinks it's important, go for it.
Okay. Is that good?
Yeah. Pam, do you have thoughts on that?
No, I agree with Ole. I think that
Yeah. Okay.
Getting strange.
You- Then,
You know, and the difficulty is too that from time to time, there's just so much else on the plate.
That's-
And sometimes the
yeah.
continuity of, you know,
Right.
of it.
so it's not mandatory that she be on those, but at
But
the
at
city
her
manager's
discretion,
discretion
yes.
to participate.
And I know if there was an item on the agenda for the hospital consortium, for example, she would choose, I need to be there for that.
Because if
But-
she's getting that's good. If she's getting Denise is getting the agenda, then that decision can be made based on the agenda. Okay.
Well, I think the issue is similar to what we were just talking about in the last discussion was, it's the communication and reporting out so everybody's kind of on the same page. And so then there's not efforts going on and then all of a sudden, like someone gets something and it's like, wait, where did this come from?
Right.
It's that kind of continued check-in and having that ability to disseminate information. And like you said with, I go to a meeting and I learn this, but then if it doesn't get to staff or whoever might be actually working on it, it's not necessarily the most valuable
Right.
use of that information. And so creating that path to connect those dots might be kind of the critical thing that we might need to better address in here in terms of a mechanism in which you do report out or provide information so people can know about it and go, oh, this is what I went to, or so that way the city manager doesn't necessarily have to be at every meeting because they'll get a quick report out. This is what we talked about, so they're up to speed as to what happened. So they don't necessarily need to be there, but then they're not having this huge learning curve when they're brought to and saying, okay, now we're ready to take action. I wasn't aware.
Right.
So it's a utilization of resources in terms of time and then disseminating information because everyone who needs to know everything can't be at every meeting.
Right.
So how do we share that? And that's kind of maybe the crux of the issue for those types of issues. And I don't think, I was trying to look through here in terms of calling out ad hoc committees specifically in this policy manual, that might be something that we need to address. But to me, I think the big issue is that dissemination of information afterwards. Like how do you better report out beyond just the obligation of I attended this and we did this.
Right.
Here's actually the beneficial information for the critical parties that need to know.
Well, okay, so for example, let's, with these two committees or whatever, ad hoc, because the rest of the council isn't really getting that information, correct?
Right.
We don't, and should we be? If we, in your water meetings and the hospital meetings, should we, the rest of the council, be getting that information?
Water stuff you get the first meeting of the month, except next month.
You give us we get the minutes and all that for that, but the hospital, no?
Oh, we can. I can't send it to you. So I send to the members of the group and the city manager.
you
But
can't
I
'cause of the
cannot.
Brown Act.
Yeah, I cannot. So I do follow all the reporting requirements that I am aware of as far as posting an agenda to, sending an agenda to the group and then sending the minutes to the group, and including Denise. And then in the case of last month, I sent a copy of the minutes to two other staff members with a CC to Denise because we're requesting assistance. So I'm not sure.
I have never sent out those minutes from the hospital ones
Okay,
to any of the
but
city
the ad
council.
hoc groups that we set up are not subject to the Brown Act. That's specifically why we did it the way we did it. The city council did not designate who is on the water group. That's,
Right.
right?
No, we did. We designated which two of our council members would
No,
participate.
that's different. That doesn't, right.
The other board,
The other members of the group were not designated by the city, which means that it's not a group that's subject to the Brown Act, which in our case is particularly necessary because we're talking strategy and, potential administrative litigation.
Then
those kinds
how
of
is it
issues.
that the rest of the council couldn't participate?
Because you guys still can't be.
Because you still can't have more than you can't have more, you can't have a majority of the council
Oh.
at a meeting.
Because it would be
Right.
city business and.
So what we proposed as a way of informing the rest of the city council what's going on is to have a standing agenda item on the first meeting of every month where, to the extent that we can, without, hurting the city's bargaining position or whatever, update the public and the city council. And then I presume as appropriate, we would ask for a closed session if there was something that involved, instituting litigation or something like that. Does that sound right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we
Are
don't
we
want
needing
to.
to add ad hoc committee guidelines to the policy manual to clarify some of those things and put in a standing meeting notification process or something like that, how we have reporting out for other meetings?
Did you help
Or
write
is that
this?
just-
You
Yeah.
definitely helped.
Jordan is here
Jordan wrote
because
it.
he's really the author of this.
Okay, so
policy document.
why don't you, on that ad hoc thing, why don't you create something and then bring it back to us?
I could look into that.
Is that okay?
Sure. I mean, I know there are things in the Brown Act that.
Well, that'd be one of the things that I need some help with. And Scott, I mean, obviously Scott helped us put this
Okay.
together. The BBK did, but we could look into that. But if that's an element that we need to add, just because that's the whole point of this is to provide, here's the process in which things are done.
Right.
Right.
To provide that clarity and say, hey, if you're going to be in this committee and you're going to do this, this is how it's going to be done to ensure that reporting out does happen, not just on a hey, we should do this, but on a hey, you're going to do this basis.
Right.
For transparency and dissemination of information.
So
we can
create
definitely discuss that.
something.
Well, and I would say that just beginning with these committees we have now is good reference because we don't need an agenda item on our city council agenda as we're going through this discovery process with the hospital, for example. But we do need an agenda item regarding water update.
Right.
I report out from the hospital meeting the high level points, and then, occasionally somebody will stop me on the street and ask me, what was that about? And I'll go into a little more detail, but I just give a brief overview of talking points, and then with the water meetings, there's more detail that's required, so.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I don't think you want an agenda item every other meeting on the hospital. No.
Okay, we're
6
okay.
or 5?
5.
5. I didn't have anything on 5. No one.
In handling complaints from residents and property owners of the city, said complaints should be referred directly to the city manager.
Which one are you on?
5.3.1.2.
Everything flows to the city manager.
Exactly.
I don't really pass all of them along, but
So our,
some I do.
yeah.
Okay. These are all good.
I'm wondering, I try to be very, I don't know, 5.4.3. When responding to constituent requests and concerns, council members should be courteous, responding to individuals in a positive manner, and routing constituent questions to the city manager, who will assign any response to the. I think sometimes we may, and I can't be specifics, but I think we may try to solve the problem ourselves, and at least if it's solvable, I don't know, it definitely needs to go for the city manager. For example, all the dog complaints. you know, here we are all trying to respond in our own way, and it's very difficult because the city is taking action and doing different things, and we may not know what that action is that's happening, and then we're trying to respond in a way that might be counterproductive to the direction that the city manager is trying to go. So I think it's just to be weary and leery of providing too much response to something. We may not have all the information on it. It may not be in our bailiwick to answer that question.
True.
So I have to say, my policy is pretty much to always acknowledge that I've received something.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to be looking into it.
Typically.
I hope everyone does that.
Yeah.
Right, including staff, that if someone's taken the time to send an email or send
Yes.
a
Yes.
letter,
Yes.
that we immediately acknowledge that
Yeah.
we've received it.
Yeah, or I'll say I'm forwarding it too.
Right.
Yeah, just some
Yeah.
acknowledgement. I
Yeah.
do miss a
Yeah.
few of those, but I know the rest of you are on it. Okay. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to re-emphasize, especially on 5.4.3, the intent of that is to ensure that when things are brought up, that if the city has a process for handling it, that process
Right.
is followed.
Yes.
And the problem with, like what you're saying, is when you insert something else in, it disrupts the process that we may be working on to deal with something. And the difficulty might be is that process may not be immediately to the solution that the person is complaining about. There might be a path that has to be taken, and oftentimes we want to jump in and say, give us the solution. But that's where this kind of is trying to direct it to make sure that we're not constantly being bombarded with things that derail us from the efforts of staff and the city management, to make sure that we are being able to be efficient with our time, handle all of our needs, and handle that person. Because if we can't handle that person with the process, then we need to come up with something.
Right.
And we can't just one-off solutions all the time. So that's kind of the intent of that direction through there.
Sure, makes perfect sense. Yes, thank you.
On actions, I just, because of, if I could, Mayor, last night when we were discussing the Atwater, when I got home and, I'm tossing and turning and rerunning the meeting in my mind, it occurred to me that, and that I'm just as bad as everybody else, that we really need to make an effort when we direct somebody to do something, that we set a time limit on it, so that staff, so everybody knows what is the expectation.
What's the expectation?
And if it's, let's say if we said, we expect you to have this done in 60 days, then that person can say, it's just not practical, or that's why I can't do it, and this is what I think. So if, staff can remind us if we're failing to do that with particular things, I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
To make sure that there are clear decisions that people can actually implement.
Good.
Yours, Jordan?
That's a little one, though.
It's a new one.
Starting to wind up there.
So I don't know where this should go, but one of the consistent things I hear back, not so much because the equipment's better, is when somebody's not speaking into the microphone, and it really does happen, especially
There.
now with people at the podium. And I'm wondering if there's some policy we want to adopt that makes somebody responsible for being the one person who says you're not speaking, you need to speak closer to the microphone, or
Yeah, because
you're listening to what people are saying, and
I know, and I don't see Dudley or whomever when they're going, get them to the mic and
Yeah, we all kind of see when they come out of the room. You're right.
Right, and you're pretty good. You'll say, but I don't know. Should that be the city clerk?
But we're up here at the dais, so we hear you, we hear them, but I think for the
Oh, here
audience
comes
there,
Dudley.
Or
Okay, hey, Dud. You can't hear Denise right now? So, Dudley, step on out.
Dudley can't hear you.
You have to hear me. I have 2 mics. Okay.
that's because she's on a chair now.
And I got a big
That's
tall
the
pad.
reason she has 2 mics.
So the question is, when we're saying, okay, so people can't hear, they either audience can't hear or you can't hear. Who should be the person? Because I'm just not focused on that. What should be the communication when, or who should say, you need to approach the podium.
speak directly into the
or
mic.
speak into the mic or how,
Well, there's 2 issues there. There's
There is, huh?
speaking to the mic and there's speaking from the audience.
yeah,
And
so,
you do a good job
right.
getting people to go to the podium.
but speaking into the mic.
I think when George and I both maybe sometimes give direction at the beginning to keep you concentrated on it, but I'll notice that throughout the meeting, you'll push yourself back, or you'll put your hand in front of your mouth, or you'll do something like that, and so I'd have to be waving at you 6 or 7 times in the course of the meeting.
I know, because I don't.
Yeah. I think it would be
Oh.
helpful if a minute before we start the meeting, we ran through it. Is your microphone, that we physically, Dudley came out and said, okay, that is where you need to be speaking to be heard clearly. And maybe it will help, impress upon
sound
us.
check.
And then
Yeah.
I do think also, Mayor, that when someone comes up to the microphone, you should just make it a habit to say, you need to speak.
Speak into
You
it.
need to have your
Directly.
mouth 3 inches from because I'll tell you, one of the ones that I struggle is Bob Greenlaw. He talks very fast and it's technical stuff, and he has a tendency to speak from here. And I don't know if you notice me, but I'm like, what? I'm like, I need my tin horn. What did you say? Yeah,
and I
so
think-
to remind everyone.
What we could do is one of the policy items would be putting in that during the council meeting, and I'll have to see exactly where it might fit in, is all comments must be spoken into a microphone. Because that's like what he said, when people start talking from the audience,
Right.
we have no idea what's going on. Like, no one can hear it. And if you want to go back and hear what was said after the meeting, you can't. So you can have the most amazing comment being made, but no one's going to know about it except for who happened to be in the room at that time.
Right, okay.
And so the policy could be about, comments, all comments, which is from staff, from council members, from audience, from whatever, need to be made into a microphone. The process in which we, give that alert, we'll maybe have to think about that, and that might actually be something that we could build into the timer. We can, if we're doing screens that have a timer, we could do a big flashing, speaking to the mic thing
Yeah.
that would flash everywhere it's flashing,
Right.
so anyone could say, please speak into the microphone, or we might give us a God mic where we come in and say, speak into the microphone.
Right,
Because
right.
I
Yeah.
think people speaking
But-
to the microphone could mean it could mean that I
Right.
think you literally have to tell people how
Right.
close you
Right.
need to be.
So we could work on just on the implementation of it. We could work on educational information, either that's here or like when you walk in, if you're going to make public comment, please do the following, be close to the mic, whatever.
Right.
Right.
That
But
sort of thing. But I think the policy might be, and we have to talk about is that, comments must be made into a microphone. And that is the tool in which we use to figure out how we get people to
Right.
speak into microphones.
Okay.
but
One thing we've gotten away from, and I don't know if it's, you have to do it,
The
but
address.
very few people are identifying who they are.
it's not required.
Required.
It's not required.
Yeah.
But Mayor, as a point, I'm going to share the podium with Jordan for a moment,
Oh,
just
okay.
to illustrate this point. But what I find is hard is, well, right now I'm
2.5 inches taller, but where this microphone is, if you're a less tall person, such as myself,
you're having to talk into here, but
it's hard to read what you've written. You're essentially
Oh,
having
right.
to yell. And then you have some of the consultants and gentlemen that we have that when we tell them to speak into the mic, they're already up here. It's
Right.
my suggestion is that we look into changing the actual equipment that we have, Or we have the handheld mic that someone can use, because I may have a deeper voice, but we do have some of our members of the audience. Judy Greer she has so much to say, and she's, it's really hard to hear what she's saying, and there's a lot of valuable points that she's making. So I think it's an equipment issue as well.
And yeah, we can look at, see, because I'm adjusting it now. That's a practical limitation. We can look at that. We can talk to Pat. We can use some of our timer budget and our AV room budget to try and bridge those two together. But if we put in here something about, in the public comment, probably around I don't know if it's public comment. Anyway, we'll have to figure that out. But something about comments all must be made into a microphone. That's the tool that we can then use to figure out how do we implement it.
Right, and I think just to have a policy that states that all staff and city council will endeavor to make sure that the record's clear. That since, it is a recorded, that is our record, that's a policy that we're all committing ourselves to.
And I can make that statement when I do the oral communication thing.
Right.
Is just say, and all comment, please step forward to the mic and speak into the
So
microphone.
we can look at technical upgrades as well as educational things.
Right.
That provide information when you come in the door, and you can, to your speech. you can
Right.
do
So
that.
remind me then, Ole,
Well,
next week to say.
Mayor,
Okay.
what I would recommend that we do
how close
on
are
the
we?
standard agenda item is in that oral communication.
That's right,
If
city
you
statement.
can add that line on our standard agendas going forward, because I often see you'll read from that, and you'll just to make sure you get all the words in there, you can just read
read the
that
line.
line right
Yeah,
in, right as you're going into oral communication.
Great.
And just as a point of curiosity, what is the appropriate distance for, I'm a loud person, so I assume that I can kind of sit back, but
These mics, I'm here about 6 inches away. Okay. I'm thinking I'm coming across pretty well. I do have a
Is he coming across pretty well, Dudley?
loud voice.
He's
He's
okay.
going like
yeah.
this.
So we will go through and tweak our system. We've gotten a few new boards. We're kind of working on the AV system in general, so that's always a process. But we'll kind of come up with some guidelines to help provide for that. Otherwise, the other solution, if things are really bad, I guess our threat would be we're going to lapel mic all of you, and we're going to hear you when you go to the bathroom, the whole thing. So be good, or you're going to get...
Never will we have
is
a
this on?
Jordan, just wire the chairs so that when you can't hear, just hit a button and we get zapped.
There. We can do that. We can do that.
Okay. So we have the stuff in here about drawing straws and all that. Decks of cards. Does that need to be in this thing?
Decks of cards.
What's that?
I always just feel like it always feels like we're fumbling through that. I
would like to have a policy on it.
Is there a
And
better
then,
way
the
to do
discussion
that?
last night about whether or not straws needed to be drawn again, I think that might be something that would be
We'll add a
useful.
section on that then, and
Yeah.
because all this.
And I
Because
personally
I know
like
part
the
of it is
cards.
just state law. There
Yeah.
are AG
Right.
opinions on it, but
I
some of it is policy.
certainly concur with adding that into the policy, but could we, the cards, the straws, it just doesn't feel formal as we're doing that. I don't
Rock,
know.
paper,
I feel like we keep,
Rochambeau.
yeah, I don't know.
Well, when they look at that, because I think it says in there that you can use all these different devices.
Right.
But I personally like the cards, but
I pulled an ace. I felt like I was in Vegas. So
And that's okay, but yeah, if we could have a policy to refer back to that aces are high and,
Instead of determining it on the spot.
the drawing of the cards and all of that, so.
We'll come back with some wording.
okay.
And then does this mean that we get a brand new deck of cards every
time.
And,
It should be.
So then do we have a formal purchasing process for where we buy the cards from and?
Sealed in a
Just
mayonnaise
kidding.
jar.
From a magic store.
There we go. They're all aces. Okay,
Okay.
that was a good call though.
This, okay, I just think on this informal action, I don't think we've ever had to do it, but the mayor shall determine by consensus a directive. I just pretty much look at you all, right? And
Yeah,
but
you
if
do.
it ever gets controversial, then we just ask for a vote.
A vote, correct.
Are we on rules of order for council meetings? 7.1? Okay, who would have thought this meeting would have gone 2 hours?
I think you're all doing very well.
Considering one council member was late, so we're really only an hour and a half.
Oh, I don't even think it was 10 minutes.
Oh,
Okay.
so the only,
7.1.2.
I'm sorry, Mayor, so the only last thing I had was 8.5.1 says that when returning from workshops, conferences, seminars where expenses are reimbursed, council members are going to present a written report and make a verbal report. I am hard pressed to do written reports on some of these things. I think, I don't know that it's necessary.
Especially if the material is there, why should we write
Right.
more?
Right.
You can put a may in there.
May,
Yeah,
may
I think
present.
may would be a better.
So I think a point that I would
So I think we
say,
should say may make a present, I'm sorry.
yeah, but that would be, so for example, at our Gateway COG meeting at the last meeting, the Blue Line transportation is so important to convey to our community and what's happening. And I gave the material to city staff and said, come get it, so you read that material, not a report from me. That I feel like giving someone else's written material that's been vetted through all of their processes is better than something that I could write. So I like may.
Right. But there is a requirement to make a verbal report.
Right.
So that should be a
Right,
shall.
which I did, yeah.
What section is that, Pam?
I'm sorry, at the page 2 of 2, 8.5.
Oh, 8.5.
So council members may present a written report and shall present, or shall make a verbal report. May on written and shall on verbal? Okay.
And it's not taking 2 hours, it's only taking an hour and 40 minutes.
Jordan?
I was going to say, you can include those documents as part of your written report. I mean, that could be, and one of the things that we're trying to do is kind of standardize some of our reporting things. The GWA notes that I presented, forwarding over to you for each monthly meeting that I attend, I've now tried to kind of standardize my form for those. And so something like that, so if you do have to do it, you're not having to figure out how you're going to report it. It's just here's the report out form to make it easy for you. And you just fill in a couple bubbles and put a liner and then attach the documentation that you got to it. That would be sufficient, I think, is something that we're trying to do a better job at least, even for my stuff. So standardizing some of those things might make it less onerous for you guys to provide that information, to make it an easy way to do it. So May's, I think, still fine to put that option in there, but that's one of the things that we can do to help you guys provide that stuff when you do have it, so you're not having to sit at the computer. And a blank page always is harder to deal with than a form that you can just fill in, at least I feel like. So that's an element that we could do to help you guys. Because I'm doing it to help myself. So I have to recreate it
No,
every
that's
month.
great. And you kind of let you know what you're looking for, or looking at too, instead of,
Yeah, I
Right.
think that's the thing is like, what's important of this? And you could talk
Right.
about what we had for lunch, or just saying, here's a couple key points, here's the thing. So it's,
Right.
you're just getting to this is what's important, what we're providing. And because the whole point is, why are you doing this? What did you learn? So everybody can learn from that experience, so we all benefit from it. So we're all a little bit more educated because, one person did it. That was kind of the intent of it.
okay. Are we doing, you're all the way through, but 7.4.9, after the council has taken an official position on an issue, all official correspondence should reflect this position, period. Council members who disagree with the position taken by the council are free to prepare correspondence on such issue as identifying the information or opinions as solely their own. No staff support, city expense, or city letterhead will be used in such instance. I'm assuming we're all doing that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I think for me, and I was just reading through that one, is I had a note on that on my prior packet. The way that I understand that, so correct me if I'm wrong, we are going to have controversial issues before us. We've had them, and we're going to have more. And we don't all agree. But we have to respect the fact that we are a group of 5 people making a decision, and we're not always going to be 100% on the same page. So respecting a decision that's made when we don't sort of win the vote on that item, but we still have our First Amendment right to have an opinion.
Yes.
And so I think this is laying out the process that we can disagree with a decision that was made, but we can't be disparaging about that decision that was made.
Right.
That's the way that I understood it.
Right. And it's also the reporting up, for example, on the freight line issue, when it was, so anything, because when we would write to the PUC or whatever we did, I believe in those correspondence, we said it was we had to say it was a 3-2 vote or whatever. We did. Huh? We didn't say it was the city council. I think we had to share that it wasn't one way or the other.
You're going back a long
Yeah.
I know, and hopefully we never have things like that come up that are that controversial.
Those were part of the difficult decisions and the difficult times that, 3 of us at that time were newly elected, and we were hit with Vons and the freight lines.
Yeah.
And right out of the gate, those were really heavy community involved discussions that, they were very passionate on both sides. So, I think,
Right.
I think it's a good item to keep in there for sure.
Right. Okay, you think we're done?
I'd like to ask a question regarding, I just saw it in section 7 about meetings. So I'll just take the example of October 2nd City Council meeting and the November 20th City Council meeting. So I did put out an email to everybody. I knew that council members Olson and Albers would they'd be out of town for the October 2nd, so there was a request maybe to move it to another date, but that date didn't work for another council member or 2 council members. So do we want to put something in here when, it refers to being able to have a quorum, obviously, that what triggers that? Or do we want a hard, fast rule on it, or... Do you follow what I'm saying?
And triggers whether we have the meeting or not.
Because you all you seriously, because you take your obligation seriously, and you want to be at every meeting.
Right.
So I don't want to ever disregard somebody's, I'm not going to be there, obviously the public.
Well, and I have to say,
public
this was a
expects us
vacation
to have
that
the
I
meeting.
planned before I even knew I was
sure.
absolutely.
Of course.
Right.
And the public expects us to have our meetings
Right.
on the first and third
Right.
Tuesdays. So, anyway, so we're good with how things are going then. If we can't have a quorum, obviously we have to reschedule it, or what?
I think I have more of a concern that if there were an item on an agenda that I have to miss, that I feel very passionately about, or I feel that I have particular knowledge about, that the other city council people would respect my request to hold that to the next meeting.
I know
Unless
that
it's a
that
time-
definitely has happened in the past,
Right.
or even
Those
as
were
the
my
city
comments.
clerk, I would know that there was an item, say if Mayor Marshall was going to be gone and she was very passionate about that it had been punted to a next meeting.
Unless it's a timing issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the items that need a 4/5 majority, if you have only 3 people in attendance, you can't vote on that.
Oh,
Right.
On certain items, yeah.
Right.
So you keep those off the
Right.
agenda.
But I think, I'm about to miss my first city council meeting, and I was feeling a little anxiety over it, and we've talked about what's going to be on the agenda, and most likely the budget's going to be on the agenda, which is something I feel very strongly about. But in the interest of time, we agreed that, I could sit with city and have all my questions answered, and, if I needed to, then I could partner with another council member to
have some questions out there publicly.
Right.
But for the most part, I that was my comment as well, Pam, that we should be able to look ahead and say, okay, what are the hot items? And if the city manager thought that certain items would make the agenda, to say this might make it, and then you'd have the ability to say, could you please hold that over?
Right. But I wonder
that's
whether that
fair.
should be reflected in the policy, that a request can be made and will be, accommodated unless there are operational reasons why it cannot be.
Okay. Come back with some wording.
Okay.
Speaking to the mic.
Pointing.
Do you want to go make a copy real quick so I can have it? We just discovered, we did make some changes. It was a city council and city attorney relationship, and he's going to go make you a copy. There's like 6 bullet points.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, we were supposed to update the manual, and we didn't.
Mine's been here the whole time.
At one time, we had evaluations that the city council people did or that staff did of the city council people, I think. I vaguely remember that they're, sort of like, are our communications clear? Things, do you feel like we're following the policies and those kinds of things? I think it might be worth thinking about, because I worry, because I'm kind of a, pushy. I can be pushy. I'll do the work myself because that's kind of just, my nature, and then turn it over. And if I would want feedback, I would want to know, is that helpful? Is that not helpful? Is it people feel I'm overstepping? So I don't know. It's something to think about.
So at some point, you have something like that?
I think constructive criticism is always helpful.
I'm very sensitive.
I am too. It's like, holy crap, what do we want to know?
No, it is valuable.
And then I go, well, that's your opinion.
Yeah.
Or just council members in general, maybe not by name, even though we could tell who everybody be talking about, or be me or you, or, okay.
And there's just a typo in the first one. I think it means as a whole.
So this was
An eagle.
this was not included in the original policy manual. This is a draft that we never put in. As I was pulling my stuff out for this meeting, I came across this again, and as you can see, there's typos, but we never vetted it beyond just a draft stage. So wanted to just put it in front of you to see if you're interested. It would be along the lines of Section 5, communication roles of city council and city staff. It would obviously be communication roles between the city council and the city attorney, and that relationship to try and provide some boundaries, clarification of the roles, and the process in which council can engage with the city attorney. Again, total draft, some key points that we had brought up initially in discussions, but never got brought in. I don't know if you don't necessarily have to take action on it at this moment, but
I don't have a problem with any of the bullets.
My concern, I think, is that the way in which we're using the city attorney is not economical, and in some ways, I'm trying to think of an example that. So, for instance, the handicap parking. I spent the time to find ordinances, forms from other cities. Presumably, other cities have good city attorneys too. And what I had hoped to be was a process that would result in very little city attorney time did not turn out that way. I mean,
And
when
we
I
are
looked at
going
the
to be
bill-
arguing that, Councilmember
Right,
Albers, because we strongly agree with that. And I want you to know, when those bills come in, I
And I saw
circle
your
and
notes. I
highlight,
mean,
and I
right.
go back to argue, and most of the time I'd say we win. And then
Okay.
it gets changed.
It gets changed, okay.
Totally, because I verified with our deputy city clerk there. you didn't utilize this much time, and so we are changing, and that's an excellent example. And I know there's been other times with council members, and probably because of the speed at which Scott is very good at answering all of you and city staff, that you've reached out for some report or something else, which I know that we could be doing, and it's just a matter of the timing. So I know myself, I have to get a lot better at responding quickly. It's just prioritizing, and some days I don't get to my emails till the end of the day. And so, yes, ma'am, point well taken.
That was part of the intent of this, was also to manage city attorney time, to ensure that it's not the first person you go to for a question or a response, or on your personal agenda item as a council member, not as a council.
Right.
So it's trying to eliminate and manage some of those things that could really add up to a lot of cost or a lot of time or a lot of effort.
Right, but I think sometimes the practical effect is, I know the issue that that I want to talk about, and then trying to convey it to Denise so that Denise can convey it to the city attorney might actually end up taking more time. Because so I want to think about this, because I think we maybe want to state these more broadly, instead of you have to follow this instead state, we do this when it's going to result in the most economic, efficient way of conveying the information. But when it's not, then it should
Definitely the complicated legal issues have to be coming from Scott.
Or, here's another example, the thing about the PARSAC and the wording of the assistant city manager position. That, to me, worked perfectly, because we minimized their involvement as much as we could, as opposed to writing a memo, then they have to read the memo, plus it takes somebody a lot more time. So yeah, I want to think about this, because I think we're all saying the same thing.
So we'll come back with some new wording and see if you like it.
I think it's an expansion upon the minimum extent practical, and it's something providing better clarification to saying, like, there might be a more practical path, which includes direct contact or engagement, but that's what the intent is. It's like, this is the most practical path to deal with this, and it's just trying to manage those impractical uses across the board, whether it's direct or indirect. That's entirely the major basis of this.
Right, and I understand that the policy's being drafted to cover all shapes and sizes of city councils, and that it's a best and worst that can happen kind of situation. So obviously we don't want somebody just constantly using city attorney time.
Right, and that was the basis of, and I'll be the one to say it, there was, in councils, not just the prior council, but in councils past, the city attorney would receive hours worth of phone calls from individual council members. Why this? Why that? Why this? Why that? Go look at this. Go fix this. Go fix that. And it was really unfair to the rest of the council, because they were, the city's being blamed for all these legal fees, when in fact it's not the council who is incurring these fees. It may be one, if not two, council members. And so that is part of the basis for some of the language that was in this, was we had to have something to refer back to say, no, this is what our policy is. Sure. But I also, in your, to address your point, sometimes you and I will even have a conversation, and I only catch like every 2 or 3 words, because there's an occasional legal term that you throw in there that I'm like, what? Wait, now I got to think, what does that word mean again? Wait, what is that? That's a legal term. And then sometimes I miss it. So I understand what you're saying, and that it doesn't always make sense when you know what you're saying and you're speaking legalese with another attorney, that it's easier for you to have that conversation. So I would welcome, more drafting of this out to include that.
When there was real concern over the legal fees in general, and trying to provide accountability, and how we've tasked out their fees to try and define what was this spent on in a little bit easier way. One of the original ideas was having a council member initiated legal fee line item, where each council member, if you initiated legal fees by spending time engaging with someone, it'd be on there. not to entrap someone, but to show like, hey, if you're doing this and it's good, we're good to go. But all of a sudden, if you see a line item for $20,000 in a month, where did that come from? And if it's built into all the other lines, you can't tell where it was initiated from versus if we called it out specifically. Again, we never took that beyond, well, we never even took this beyond the draft stage, but that was part of the original conversation. If there's, not that there's a current concern, but when you're looking at the overall, if things could go, if that's an item, I mean, if you have to discuss that with BB&K about how would they task that to track it if you needed to get to that point. But again, the whole point of this was to manage costs.
Right. So on the one, members should discuss matters with the city during city attorney office hours. So if I were to send him a question, because sometimes I think of stuff at 9 o'clock at night and I type it, I'm not expecting him to look at that and because do we pay time and a half for nighttime?
No, but again, it goes back to my comment earlier that our city attorney was being contacted at midnight, 1, 2, 3 in the morning, which was very inappropriate, directly on his cell phone.
Well,
for
and
non-emergency
phone calls,
related items.
phone
Yeah.
calls, not
So it was, I think it's encompassing. That's not the only reason, but it is,
But I do think the policy should be that contacts, for the most part, should be through email, because it creates a record, right? And it allows you to say, because phone calls are never economical.
Right.
I mean, it's just not the most economical way usually of conveying information.
But except emails also have a way of misconstruing things. I mean, the interpretation of an email, maybe not in city business, but in real life,
Right.
they get ugly. They can get ugly. Oh,
or to initiate a conversation, I would
But
like
by
to.
that very nature, then, the email enables you to CC the city manager.
Right.
I mean, it's another way of keeping with
Exactly.
the other policies of making sure that,
Agreed.
Okay.
yeah, I can't think of a situation in which it would be appropriate for a city council person
To call.
to
Conflicts of interest.
Well, I mean, but I could see
Phone,
sending an
you mean.
email that CCs Denise, so then there's you're on alert, okay, there's some money to be spent here with a
Right.
conflict of interest
Right.
issue.
Yeah.
I mean, time permitting. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, if there's not enough time to wait for a response to an email or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
And that reminds me, I saw that Micah had posted, I got an email from him about research that he had done, Oakland, and there was another city somewhere else in the United States that were considering taxing people who have vacant properties. And I just wanted to make sure it got forwarded to Scott. I don't know if you saw it. I'll forward it to you and Scott.
I did receive that as well, so hopefully he emailed everyone.
Yeah, I didn't look to see who he had included.
And also want to state, League of California Cities has free attorneys. It doesn't cost us anything to use their legal advice. So, and if it's a little matter like on, let's say you wanted to talk about rent stabilization and you wanted clarification on something, we could call them and don't have to call our own city attorney. Anyway, seems like I called them once a number of years ago about something. But, okay.
No, but I think that as, I don't know if it's for the policy manual, but I think we do need to have a general conversation, as we said, about how do we best utilize the city attorney services and not,
Right. Okay.
and keep the costs down.
Yeah. Okay.
I am doing an evaluation of last month's because I am truly stumped why it went up.
Right,
So
and I do want to talk.
because we were doing so well.
Okay. Well, I think if there's no other further comments, do you have anything you'd like to add, Gabby?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you for a great meeting. Thank you, Dudley. Thank you, Jordan. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, boys and girls.